Okay, this is lesson 6.5, linear inequalities. We're going to start with example 1. Linear inequality is going to be an inequality that we are going to graph like we graph a line, and then we're going to shade a part of the graph which represents all points in that region are going to be true. I'll come back to that after a couple examples. Our first one is going to be example 1. From your book, you can follow along. This is page 394. We have this linear inequality. And it gives me a point. And it says, is the point 1, 2 true? So it asks, part A of it asks that. So if I want to check if it's true, I just plug it in. So I've plugged 2 in for Y, and 1 in for X. And I get 2 is greater than 1 minus 3. I'm going to simplify this. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. If you're having trouble with that subtraction, use a calculator to check it. And I can see that 2 is greater than 1 minus 3, so this is true. It asks me to do the same thing with another point, negative 3, negative 7. Let's make that a little neater. So again, I will plug into my inequality. My y is negative 7, so I'll plug negative 7 in for y. Again, this is the same inequality as before. X is negative 3, so I'll plug negative 3 in for that. And I get negative 7 is greater than negative 6. This is false. If I'm thinking about it on a number line, I've got 0 here. I got negative 6 here. I have negative 7 over here. That is less than. So my inequality should have the small end pointing at the negative 7. It does not. So that is a false statement. It is not true. Okay. That was example 1. We're going to move on to example 2, where we're going to actually graph a linear inequality. And it asks me to graph this inequality. I'm going to start by graphing what we call the boundary line. I'm going to think about this graph, y equals x plus 2. Plus 2, x minus 2. Same thing, but I'm graphing it like it's an equal sign. To graph this, I think about y equals mx plus b. Remember b being my y-intercept. So I'm going to start with that. My y-intercept, b, is negative 2. There's nothing in front of the x. Here, I'll label it b is negative 2. Nothing in front of the x, so that means my slope is 1, aka 1 over 1. Positive slopes go up and across, left to right. I'm going to positive, so I'm going to go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. Okay, there's one important rule to keep here. If you have one of these, it's a dashed line. That's what we have. If it's strictly a greater than, less than. It's a greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, it is a solid line. I am going to dash this line. Pretend like that's straight. I can't use a ruler on this thing, so. Now, there are all kinds of points that make this true. There's a bunch that make it false. So I'm going to pick a point on one side of this, either left or right. Okay? The easiest point to pick, and you can pick this any time that it does not go through this, is 0, 0. So I'm going to take 0, 0, and I'm going to plug it in just like I did in example 1. For my original inequality, oops, I should plug in. So I plugged in 0 for y. I need to plug in 0 for x. My inequality that I started with, you can see it on the left of the screen right below example 2 is that. Plugging in 0, 0 for both. I get 0 is greater than negative 2. This is true. So the point 0, 0 is here. It is in the true area. One side of this line is true, one side is false. If it's in the true area, I shade the side with it in. If that point was false, I'd shade the other side. I just kind of scribble, but make sure when you scribble, you keep it to your side of the line. Any point over here is going to be true for this inequality. There are a lot of correct answers. Okay. So I'm going to do a couple other ones. Example 3 has two quick parts. X is greater than -1. Whenever I have a line x equals, so I'm going to treat it like x equals -1. And let's do a different color. X equals -1. This should be a dashed line. So it's a greater than, so that strictly greater than means I have to have a dashed line here. If I pick a point like 0, 0, I plug 0 in for x, there is no y. 0 is greater than, that's true. 0, 0 is here, so I got to shade the side that has it on. That was A. B here, go back to black for a second, gives me y is greater than or equal to 2. Y equals 2 is a horizontal line at 2 because all of these lines, this one is solid. So I've got my x and y axis there. I plotted 2. Horizontal line. All of the values on this line have a y coordinate of 2, no matter what their x coordinate is. With my x equals -1, all of them had an x coordinate of -1, no matter what my y coordinate is. Now I'm going to take 0, 0. Since 0, 0 isn't on my line, I'm going to plug it in. 0 goes in for y. This is false. So 0, 0 is right here on the graph. I don't want 0, 0 to be shaded, so I'm going to shade the part that doesn't have it. So I'm going to shade the side of the line that doesn't include 0, 0. I'm going to shade it up there. Again, because of the or equal to here, I used a solid line. This one, because it was false, I shade the side without 0, 0. Maybe I can get in tight enough to erase this. It didn't work out quite as well as I'd hoped. It erased something I didn't want to erase. Okay, so, but there we have it. There is my boundary. Okay, that, we're going to talk about problem 5 here for a second, or example 5. And it gives you this graph. You're going to see a little bit better graph if you look at the book. But it's got 2 points here. It's a solid line, and they've shaded this side. First thing I want to do is write the equation for my line. My y-intercept here is at 1. So I got a +1. My slope, I went up, plotted those 2 points. I went up 2 over 1. That is a positive slope. This is 2x plus 1. I do not know the inequality, so I'm going to test 0, 0. I'm going to kind of reverse what I did with plugging in 0, 0. I do not know what the inequality is. I'm leaving this blank here. Plugging in 0 for x and y, I've now got to change my equals to an inequality and figure out which way it goes. 2 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 is the larger value. It's the solid line. It's or equal to. My equation is that. And that is A. That's the first one. They gave you multiple choice to figure this out. Okay. This is 6.5. This is the notes on 394 to 397.